They could use these 3 hits and then Germany take those as damage not destroyed, but I think because of the overwhelming numbers that the Soviets have got in this battle, they can use those 3 ones and target one of these German fighters. That's a targeted loss for Germany. This is Axis and Allies on the Tour Left channel. Today we are looking at a house rule, one of my house rules, called Inferior 1. It fits onto 2 sides an A4 sheet really easily, because the only part you have to worry about is this line here in blue and that line there in brown. The rest of it is not flam and waffle. I never do that too much. The rest of it is because this house rule will work on any global or theatre version of the regular Axis and Allies, and because there are things like strategic bombing raids and capital ships being the battleships, or in some versions the carriers as well, and difficult edge cases come along. This is why there's so much writing on the rest of the pages, just to cover those edge cases. And as a for instance, on the back here, this small section here is part of the anniversary edition, where those Chinese units are purchased in a different way to regular. You've just got to cover that as well, because a lot of anniversary players out there, including myself. And the last part is an entire combat example there, just to help you go through with it. Before we get going, may I mention that I make these videos in aid of a charity called Cure Parkinson's. You can guess what they're trying to do. There is a link to them below this video, one in the About section on the channel page. If you happen to have a spare dollar, euro, yen, yak, or British pound you could send to them, I'm sure that they'd appreciate it. So, why was this house rule made? A few months ago, 7-8 months ago, I was really hitting Guadalcanal. I love playing that Axis and Allies version of the game, and I began to really appreciate the damaged not destroyed effect which you had in that with different 1s and 2s, and I wanted to weld that system into a global sort of theatre game. This is what this is trying to do, and why it's called Inferior 1. The premise of it is that a single 1 dice roll 1 is an inferior hit. When you roll a handful of dice, it's the ones you're looking out for, particularly in this. And depending upon whether option 1 or option 2 is either chosen or enforced by either of the players, those ones may be used to target one of the opposition units, or may be taken as the inferior hits, as damaged and not destroyed. The ones you're looking out for will occur in a single dice roll. They don't carry over to the next dice roll, although the house rule itself does carry on with several different dice rolls. And for ease of explanation, I've changed the terminology slightly. You still have attackers and defenders, don't worry about that. But the person who is actively rolling the dice is referred to in this sheet as the active player. They're the ones rolling the dice. The other player, the guy that's usually applying hits to their own units, choosing their own casualties, they are the opposing player. So whether you're your attacker, if you roll the dice, you're the active player, and when you're the defender rolling the dice, you are then the active player yourself. But it is a lot easier to follow through than it is to explain sometimes, as a lot of things are. But it is just this 1 blue line and 1 brown line. Everything else is the edge cases and caveats. I'll get this made into a PDF. I'll whack it up onto BGG. You'll be able to find it in the Europe 40 section, probably the most convenient place to go and find it, as Inferior 1 house rule, 2 or less name. You'll find it there somewhere. So let's go to the other side of the camera, and we'll have a little look at one of the examples to really get you into this house rule, because when I devised this house rule, or thought about this house rule, and it's gone through several iterations of it, it's one of those ones that I haven't got bored with. I do a lot of house rules, as you know, and I test them, play them for 3 or 4, sometimes several goes through, and then drop them like hot potatoes, and get onto the new latest thing. But this one here, since devising it and tweaking it and getting up to this final I think it's about the 7th version I've got of this, I'm absolutely loving the economy and the brevity and the way it works and the way it makes you think differently about your combat, about whether you target units, or whether you let the other player take the units as damaged and not destroyed. But you'll see more of that when we get over to the other side of the camera. Let me start waffling and show you a few examples of how this works in actual gameplay. Okay, before we get into a proper game with this, let's just run through some of the exceptions with this Inferior 1 rule. Anti-aircraft guns do not apply anything other than the version's regular rules with anti-aircraft guns because they hit on a 1 anyway. It's the same with kamikazes in global, and I think in the First Pacific they have kamikaze rules apply the version's regular rules, not anything else from this Inferior 1 house rule. With industrial complexes, for their strategic bombing raids that are done on them, with their escort fighters in some versions, again apply the version's regular rules. If we move on to some of the Navy vessels, which we're not covering in this particular example of combat, the capital ships, which is going to be your battleships, and in some versions your aircraft carriers as well, do not apply the Inferior 1 hits to them. Their dice that they add to combat will still be added to the battle as per usual, but they cannot be targeted by Inferior 1 hits, and they cannot be taken by the opposing player as damaged not destroyed. Also, when it comes to bombardment with, in this case, the battleships, some versions have the cruisers bombarding. I think in the very first version, destroyers bombarded as well during amphibious assaults. When the shots come back from the defenders on the mainland, you can't target these ships. You can't target them anyway. But just making it crystal clear, it doesn't work for this part of the this house rule interpretation. Then we come on to transport ships. Now, transports, I've made them a special case here. I believe that because you can target ships, you can target transport ships with your 2 or more Inferior 1 dice. However, the opposing player cannot choose those as damaged not destroyed casualties, because that way we'd be going back to the classic game where you could take transport ships as casualties and you buy a load of cheap units and put them in with your expensive units to protect your fleet. Well, you can't do that in with this Inferior 1 rule. And then when it comes to submarines, they attack and defend on different values all over the place depending on which version you get. What I've said with submarines is they obey their normal submarine rules. Destroyers will take away their submerging abilities, etc., and they can't hit air units. However, if they add an Inferior 1 to combat, and there is an existing Inferior 1 that's been chucked up by one of these surface ships or one of the aircraft involved in that battle, then an Inferior 1 from submarine can add to an existing Inferior 1 to turn that into a targeted hit. It's a slightly odd thing, but you'll get to follow it quite easily in the rules. Just have a little bit of thinking time to go along with it. So let's look at a specific combat example. In this case, we've got Britain versus Germany. Germany in their Platinum muster with their camouflage netting on their artillery pieces. There's a video about how I made those somewhere on my site. I think it's on the one with the kamikazes and there's a customizations players. Check it out. You'll have some fun. You'll find some good stuff on there. Let's just start rolling some dice for this battle and try to show you how this would work in gameplay. We've got a bomber rolling in at 4. We have 2 fighters rolling in at 3 and 4 tanks rolling in at 3. For the plucky Brits. Can't roll any kind of hits, but those ones are special. And they've completely failed with that. I think just that one bomber has scored a hit. So it's just 1 hit on the Germans. They're now going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 at 2 for the infantry artillery combinations, and 2 at 1 for the naked infantry rolling in. That's a terrible start for the Brits, but it's an okay way to show an example of this game. Because they've only scored 1 inferior hit and 1 regular hit on there, Britain cannot apply that as a targeted hit for the option A. If you don't score any 1s or you only score 1-1, then option 2 comes into force, and effectively both those dice are given to the opposite player. And they can choose to take that hit as a damaged and not destroyed, but it has to be on the cheapest unit in any of the classes. If there was a fighter plane in there, Germany couldn't take that damaged not destroyed on the bomber. It'd have to be on the fighter plane. But as there's mainly land units in here, the cheapest land units are going to be the infantry units. So they could take that on the cheapest infantry and move him back to there. He would go into past the casualty strip. He would be damaged not destroyed. He would go onto the base card, and then at the Next, purchase and repair phase that Germany get. They can repair him at half his purchase cost, rounded up. You become back on the mobilisation phase, provided they don't exceed the normal IC mobilisation limits. The other casualty that can be chosen by Germany would be from that regular dice there, will go into the casualty strip. But Germany, however, have this option, because they might say, well, actually, we are behind in this battle, we can see what's coming, let's preserve our expensive bomber. We'll move that back into the damaged not destroyed. It's the cheapest air unit. That way, we can get that back for half price and get that back into some position where we might need it later on, rather than having that being wiped out on a subsequent dive roll, which didn't go as well for them as it has done this time. And then the other regular hit will go into the casualty strip. When Germany get their reply rolls, as per usual, they now become the defending player. They are the active player again. They roll a tank in at 3. I can see 1, 2 artillery and 1, 2, 3, 4 infantry. And there's one guy here on the bomber and rolls in at a 1. That's how bombers defend. So it's the same dice rolls as per usual, just looking at the results. And that's pretty spectacular result for Germany. Their bomber has scored a hit. The tank has scored a hit. And these guys are misses, and all those are going in at 2s for the infantry artillery combinations, and they have scored another targeted hits and a couple of regular hits. So again, Germany may decide, well, we can use those 3 dice to target this one British plane. Britain could lose that straight away from the battle because they're the attacking guy, that goes away straight away. And 2 more hits can be applied by Brits as regular choose your own casualties. They would choose 2 infantry units. Again, Germany could say, well, actually, we're going to do this a different way around. We're going to give all those 5 dice to the Brits. We're not going to apply option 1 and let the Brits choose their own casualties. Britain would have to lose 5 casualties from here. 3 units will be damaged and not destroyed. And 2 will be regular casualties. Britain would choose their cheapest units as damaged and not destroyed. They could take those back to good old Blighty to be repaired next turn, as we mentioned, the same process. There are some ideas that come in from here as to whether you apply casualties as damaged not destroyed rather than being targeted. It's the cost of repair over purchase. Your opponent's strength in subsequent rounds and your strength in subsequent rounds could be an influencing factor. If there's a necessity to take control of a territory, you're going to want to get something in there. You might decide, I'm going to take an expensive air unit rather than taking a ground unit. That happens in lots of different versions in several different situations, but it's more applicable here. And there's also that if you choose not to apply those ones, as Germany might have done here, what you are doing to some degree is you're dictating the purchase. Although it's not a mandatory purchase that you actually must repair these units. Only if you do not repair those at the next repair stage, then they are lost from the game. But you are, to a degree, dictating the purchase of your opposing player, because there is an idea that if you don't repair them, economically it's a bad thing. You might be more interested in keeping the economics right rather than maybe the strategy right. But that's for finding out as this game develops and as this house rule and technique with it develops as well. So that'll do for now. I'll see you on the game board somewhere shortly. Okay, so I finally figured out what I want to play. Affectionated will notice straight away that this is the anniversary edition, and we are playing the 1942 setup. We'll be using the objective bonuses, the optional objective bonuses. That puts a few more pennies in the coffers, gives us some bigger battles, we hope. And obviously we're using the Inferior 1 house rules we spoke about at the start of this video. I've also decided that we're going to be following 1 power per turn, at least for the opening rounds, till we get into the real blood and guts of it, to speed things along a little bit. And well, we're going to start off with Japan because they start off the 1942 setup, so why not indeed. They have done nothing thus far other than decide on their purchases, which is going to be 1 factory going into Manchuria and a couple of destroyers to help bolster up their fleet. They've flagged up a couple of battles on the board so far. I think that's going to be plenty enough for turn 1. Don't want to get ourselves too in advance because they are going to be expensive battles for Japan down in southern Asia. They're going to try to wipe out the British fleet early on using just 2 fighters and their battleship. Could be expensive, but it could be the best thing for them just to take any kind of pressure off in the South Asian area. Also, trying to take out the Flying Tigers early as well. Expensive bomber, couple of fighters, and just 2 infantry guys running in there to act as absorption. Yeah, it may be a overly expensive loss for Japan, but it also could be a brilliant move for them. We'll find out. I've flagged up just one non-con move coming down from here. There may be some more later on, depending on how these battles turn out. So let's get this battle up onto the board. We'll start off with one in the Indian Ocean first, and I shall see you over there. Okay, there's the battle board set up for the opening skirmish of this game. We're a little bit cramped for room, so my dice tray is going to go here in the middle of the oceans. Rebel Universalis is once again taking up far too much of my time and far too much room, but it's a wonderful story it takes you on when you're playing the game. So we have got one dice at 1. We have got 1 dice at 4 for the battleship and 2 fighters at 3, rolling in there for this first roll. What can we do? And it's pretty good. That one, we got 2 hits out of the fighters. So one of those, though, is going to be an inferior 1 hit, as we've seen from before from my earlier demonstrations. What will Britain do? They can take the cheapest unit as the damage not destroyed. It can be the destroyer or it can be the fighter plane. I think up there in UK land, up there, there's plenty of navy up there at the moment. And the destroyer is cheaper than the aircraft to repair. So if we lose the carrier at a certain point in time, we're going to lose the fighter anyway. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to take that as our damage not destroyed into the Sahara Desert, and the destroyer itself is going straight away as a casualty. Or maybe we take, they both hit back at 2s. No, that'll be fine for now. So their reply, the British reply versus the Japanese there, they have got their 1 fighter rolling in at 4 in defence, and the destroyer and the aircraft carrier all go in at 2s. So it's the same dice actually, just different numbers. 4s and 2s, what can they do? They can all miss. Oh dear. That's not a good start for the Brits, but Japan are going to be absolutely loving it. So I can remove both of those units here, stepping around the camera. Both of these units are removed from the game here, but the fighter plane will fly all its way over to the British card, which is over there, get plonked onto its money, plonked being a technical term. That would be the one that which they would try to repair as damage not destroyed on their turn. Let's go into round number 2 of this battle now. As far as the Brits are concerned, they are in desperate doo-doo. Japan are in high hopes. 4s and 3s, again, to try to smash this aircraft carrier out of the way. And wow, out for the 6s. No, they failed entirely. Let's now roll the British aircraft carrier, trying to roll it at 2 in defence in this version, I'm pretty sure it is. And it misses as well. So, well, they're a bit of a saviour there going off. Let's try more sensible dice in round number 3 of this battle. And we have got 1 hit out of that battleship at a 4. So the aircraft carrier for the Brits will go down. It's a regular casualty. And it can now roll its dice at a 2 possibly and miss as well. So that is the end of that battle there in the Indian Ocean. The Brits have been wiped out entirely because this 1 transport ship will go as well as a nominal roll. Oh, it's gone at a 1, but you cannot take inferior hits on transport ships. It's part of the rules. Because the transport ships cannot be taken as an inferior hit, because that would just lead them to be used as cushions for the bigger fleets, like we did in the old classic game many years ago. So as that transport ship is destroyed, let me get Japan back up onto the board, and get the next battle up there as well, which is the one in Yunnan. Okay, so that's the guys back into the Indian Ocean. The battle now moves further forward up north into Yunnan. The battle is up on the board, ready to rock and roll. Let me move my dice tray in the correct position as well. We have got, for Japan, for the IGN, 1 bomber rolling in at 4. They've got 2 fighters rolling in at 3, and they've got 2 naked infantry rolling in at 1s. Can they continue their good luck? They've got 1 hit at a 4 and 1 hit at 2 and 1 hit at a 3, but that is all they need to do, because the Chinese forces have got 3 units in there as well, and because they haven't rolled any inferior ones, all those guys are taken as casualties. They're completely wiped out. They go back onto there straight away. But what can they do in return versus Japan? They will have their fighter, their Flying Tiger, going in at a going into a 4, and their 2 infantry going in at 2s. And that's not good for them either. They've just scored the 1 hit versus Japan. Japan will be taking that off of their 1 infantry guy. He's completely gone. So a couple of guys are going to go, or 1 guy's going to be left in there as a Japanese unit, and I can land the planes there quite safely and start shuffling guys down from the Japanese mainland into here to support the planes when they land as well. So let me just tidy everything up, do the non-com movements off camera, and I will see you in a wee while. Okay, that's how it all looks now with Japan all tidied away. They've bulked up this force down here in the Indian Ocean, taking the carrier forward, because this 1 plane from Egypt could come across into the seas and attack the 1 lonely battleship that was there. Alternatively, if we left the carrier back here in Sea Zone 38 by East Indies, the 1 plane from Australia can come 1-2 into the water here, have a bash at the carrier. Yeah, not likely, but I think that's probably the better choice. Everything else has moved themselves towards the coast up here in Kiangsu. We put the bomber in there, again being slightly aware of this 1 Soviet bomber. What do you do with that in this game? The Soviet bomber is one of those lost units. It can, however, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then land back with its allies in China afterwards. So I think protecting that 1 bomber is a fairly good idea. And we've got our factory up here in Manchuria as well. Everything else is just bulking up the force down the Caroline Islands and putting our 2 destroyers on from our purchase as well. So that'd be it for turn number 1, I think. And I'll see you sometime in turn number 2 with an after-action report on looking at the next power to concentrate on this game. Maybe one of the European forces next round. We'll see how we get on. Okay, I know I said I'd see you in turn number 2. We're actually still in turn number 1, but here's a really good example of how this Inferior 1 house rule can change your thinking about this game. We're on with the Soviets just straight after the Japanese turn, and they were planning to do some skirmishes into this northern area. They've already taken out Finland quite nicely. They've moved into eastern Ukraine down here. But this battle here into Belarusia, we didn't particularly want to win this battle as the Soviet player, because it leaves these guys vulnerable to attack from Baltic states and from Poland as well. So we wanted to kind of do some damage and walk back out again. But in the final round of this battle, this is the Soviet dice roll. They rolled a pair of 1s, inferior hits, plus their tank entirely missed. And Germans in reply, they scored 1 hit as well from that too, which would mean if the Soviets enforce these 2 hits upon these Germans, they could take these 2 guys back to their base and use them as damage not destroyed. And the Soviets would be in a slightly more forward position than they really wanted to be. So instead, what they have done now as the Soviet player is to take these 2 as a targeted hit on one of the infantry. It means they don't have to invade Belarusia and can in fact now decide, I've taken this 1 casualty from that German hit, because obviously just 2 units in there afterwards would be quite weak. They're going to target those 2 hits on the Belarusian guy and move themselves back in there and do a normal retreat. It's a way of exploiting that retreat move with the Inferior 1 house rule. So next time I speak to you, I will be in battle number 2, I promise you, with one of these European powers. Okay, we're into turn number 2 properly now, and Quick précis of what's happened thus far. I've not had such a quiet term for Japan in a long time. Because they bought this factory here in Manchuria, it meant in turn number one, they couldn't buy any transport ships. Therefore, the number of units they've got over on the Chinese mainland is quite limited, but they have had quite a lot of success in pushing the Chinese back towards their heartland areas. They tried to come down and do this number on the Indian fleet here, the English Indian fleet that was down here, did a successful job, took them all out, and the fleet that was here now has gone through Sea Zone 38 and into the coast of New Guinea, threatening Australia. It's a phony threat because they haven't got any transport ships down here, but it's doing something to distract the Americans to a small degree. That purchase of the factory is really sort of dictating Japanese policy thus far. It has allowed the Americans to pull back from the Hawaiian Islands here and conglomerate themselves outside the western coast into one bigger fleet. That's quite a potent force. Japan have to be worried about that with this force that's around Wake Island, is it, in the middle here? It's not going to threaten their main island just yet, but I think Japan are slightly concerned about those guys there. And America haven't come forward anywhere on this coast at all. They're just pulled back, just conglomerating their forces. While we're on this side of the map, just over here, you might be able to see this is the German base cut. They've got a couple of fighters and an artillery unit in their damage not destroyed. That's going to dictate part of their purchase. It's not too bad for Germany buying aircraft, but I think they would prefer to have more artillery infantry combinations than aircraft this time round. But that's for in the future. Part of this, again, we follow on from this Japanese purchase of their one factory. It meant that the Brits were thinking about a factory as well, somewhere down on the southern hemisphere. Obviously, India would have been a nice place to put it, but they weren't entirely sure they could hang on to it. And building a factory in India just for Japan to take over and use later on would be a real harsh time for them. So they took a 50-50 gamble, a little coin flip, and they put their factory here into Egypt. It's only a 2 IPC place. You can do that in these anniversary rules. They're only building 2 units at a time in there. It's not a lot, but if they can start getting a factory run going there, it could be beneficial to the Brits to come back through to India or to look after their North Africa. It's the Italians that control North Africa in terms of the Mediterranean at the moment, but with the Americans on their doorstep, because they landed there, losing an expensive bomber to one of the targeted shots by the 2 Germans that are in there, bowling a pair of ones, which was pretty spectacular. But it's the Italians that control the Med at this stage and can feed across. So to attack this fleet in the Med is going to be the Brits' priority, as well as making sure they don't lose their factory either. Nothing else has particularly happened over there up in Northern Europe, apart from the skirmishes before we spoke about with the Soviets coming forward. That clever little idea of them not inflicting the damage not destroyed, but actually targeting one of the 2 units in Belarus, allowing them to pull back and just hold their line on this east-western border. But we are on with the Soviets now. We've gone through the Japanese turn 2's turn, and we're on with the Soviets turn 2's turn. And they're going to be making one attack. Let me focus in a little bit so we can see where we are. Here we are here. This is the attack into the Ukraine. There's a lot of expensive units there that Germany have. There's 3 tanks, a couple of fighters, which they thought would be a good defensive force or a good defensive deterrent, but the Soviets have said, hell no, we are going for this big time. They've got their bombers flown in from Russia. That's going to be involved in there. There's 3 tanks, a couple of artillery, and a whole heap of infantry that they're going to use to roll with the punches. And depending on however these dice rolls go off in here, they can either retreat back into eastern Ukraine, retreat back into Caucasus, and we've got these guys here in Russia that can fill in afterwards just to block any holes. But we're hoping, as far as the Soviets are concerned, to be one successful bash into the Ukraine and stay there for good. Let's stop waffling. It's on the battle board. I shall see you over there in 2 shakes. Let me just focus you in up there 1 second. Because I'm stupid, what I forgot to mention was the Germany's success in the North Sea. They took out the British fleet off of Iceland in Sea Zone 2, losing just 2 submarines themselves, a big economic victory that was for Germany. They also purchased for themselves 1 extra transport ship, and I think it was a couple of destroyers in there as well, protecting these transport ships. It's not really a fake sea lion attack, although Britain have to cover that off buying some more guys to go onto their mainland. It's more so that they can load these units around from Germany straight into Karelia and try and grab this Leningrad factory. We don't tell the Soviets about that. Talking of Soviets, let's go on with this battle that's on the board, ready to rock and roll. Here we are on the battle board. For the Soviet Union, they have got 1 bomber rolling in at a 4 and 3 tanks rolling in at a 3. And they've scored pretty well, actually. That's 1 hit from the bomber and 2 hits from the tanks. One of them is an inferior hit. But for the infantry artillery combinations, we've got 4 guys rolling in there at 2s. And scoring 2 more hits. This is pretty good. I think the Soviets are loving this right now. And there's now 7 guys going in there at 1s. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all at 1s. Mixture of dice. These are the naked infantry rolling in. And they've scored 2 more hits at 1s. Wow, that's good. I think that's an overroll. That's definitely an overroll by the Soviets there. They're going to be very, very happy with that. They got those 3 hits though. They could use these 3 hits and apply them to Germany and let then Germany take those as damage not destroyed. But I think because of the overwhelming numbers that the Soviets have got in this battle, they can use those 3 ones and target one of these German fighters. That's a targeted loss for Germany. They will lose that for sure. And then 4 more units to be taken as per regulars, which is 4 German infantry. They are regular casualties in this battle. Let's now go on to the German reply. And they're going to hope for a similarly good roll, I should think, themselves. For Germany, they have got 2 fighters rolling in at 4, and there are 3 tanks rolling in at 3s. We do that part of the battle first up. 4s and 3s, and it's not too bad. That's one of the 4s, and these are the guys rolling in at 3s. They've scored 1 inferior hit themselves, and there are 4 infantry making their last gasp dying roll, all at 2s. Use my luminous dice for a change. Present from a friend. And I call these my lucky dice, jokingly, and that's quite lucky. They've scored 2 more hits on the Soviet forces that are there. So that will be 5 off of Soviets. 1 of those will be a damaged and not destroyed, which the Soviets can choose themselves. Cheapest unit in any of its classes. But I think, being as though the Soviets are on top with this, I think they're just going to take that as a regular hit, getting 1 guy back slightly cheap. So these guys, for Germany, have all been lost from the battle. These 5 guys have been lost by the Soviets. 1 of those is going to be a damaged, not destroyed. Go back onto their base card. And these guys from Germany are all gone. We can move on to round 2 of the battle, where we have the Soviet bomber that will roll in at a 4. And we can roll in 3 tanks with the red dice at 3s. Hoping for a similarly good roll to that first round. And that is a good roll again. That's 1 has missed. They've all hit, although 2 of them are in inferior hits. And they have got 4 guys rolling in at 2s, infantry artillery combinations. Scoring 1 more proper hit. And there are 2 guys running in there naked with our lucky dice. All going in at 1s. And they've scored 1 more hit as well. Ooh, wow, okay. So again, they can target 1 unit using those and take 2 more casualties regularly off of Germany. I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to use those 3 dice to target this 1 fighter that Germany have got. And Germany can apply those 2 other hits themselves as 2 tankens and going back out onto the casualty strip. They will get all their reply rolls as per normal. They have the fighter there going back at a 4, and the 3 tanks that were left there going in at 3s with the red dice. And it's okay-ish. Getting a bit depressing for Germany now, but they've scored 2 more hits on the Soviets. 1 of those would be a damaged and not destroyed. And I see absolutely no reason now, because of the power that the Soviets have got in this battle here. Again, they just take the 2 casualties themselves as infantry, and 1 of those can go back onto their base card to be repaired next time. And these guys are all lost by Germany. Into the final round of this battle, nothing's going to happen more than Germany losing this battle. They've got the 1 bomber at 4, 3 tanks at 3, and scoring plenty enough hits thus far. And the 4 guys at 2s. Remember, this could be a damage not destroyed, so it's important to roll the rest of this battle out. You didn't see me roll the dice, did you? That's what I just rolled. We've got the 4 guys at 2 there for the Soviets, and they haven't scored a hit now. So therefore, because it's a damage and not destroyed hit, Germany can take that dice before it takes these particular dice. So this 1 tank from Germany can be counted as damage not destroyed and can go back onto Germany's base card for repairing next time. Not before it gets to the defensive roll at a 3. And scores a miss as well. So all these units will go back into Ukraine to be disseminated around the board, and in the non-com phase the bomber will probably go back into Russia and we do some reinforcements there, and this unit goes back onto the base card over there for Germany to join its over there to join a couple of fighters that are already there for repairs next time round as well. Let me get things tidied up and I'll see you in a second. Okay, that's how things now stand when Ukraine has been put back onto the board and their bomber has flown back into Russia. We're going to take some of the guys here from Russia and move those into Ukraine. Just 3 guys, just enough to act as a blocking force in case these guys in Poland come through. I'm not sure that they're definitely going to. A couple of guys here that are already in Russia, they're starting their way across to, apart from wrecking their factory, across to the Urals, going across to cover off this Japanese factory that's in Manchuria. And apart from that, they're going to be building some guys into Russia, again just to help block off this area. A couple of guys are going to be built up in the Karelia factory against this perceived threat, because they can see what Germany are doing up there. They don't know their cunning plan. And a couple of artillery being built in the Caucasus to for their major fight backing forces, because obviously artillery are much better than infantry in attack. That's where the main thrust of the Soviet forces are going to be coming from into Germany later on. That is it for the Soviet turn. That will be it for turn number 2, I think. I will see you in turn number 3. Haven't quite thought about who we're going to be playing in turn number 3. We're trying to get things mixed up nicely for you as it occurs. I'll see you sometime in the near future. Okay, we are in turn number 3 now. Plenty much has happened since I last spoke to you for that Soviet versus Germany battle in the Ukraine. But rather than doing chronologically, which could be a little bit confusing, let's just go to the positions we are now in turn number 3, and we run ourselves east to west across the board. Our focus in on Wake Island. There is one massive Japanese fleet there, and there's a big American fleet there off of their San Francisco coast waiting to come over. I think it will have to happen this turn because America have been holding back. They've been building up their forces till they're strong enough to come forward only once and bash the Japanese. But Japan have had so much fun and so much success in their Chinese endeavours. This force is getting so big now, America must go into this battle prematurely, I think. Whether they want to or not, it's got to be done on this turn. That's going to happen on the end of turn number 3, and I'll probably bring that one to you live. Over on the Chinese mainland, Japan have got themselves further forward than they have done before. They've now really just going to do a mopping up exercise, getting rid of these last few Chinese pieces, and still waiting to go into India. Whilst India isn't being able to put anything in there, there's no factory in there. Japan have felt unpressured to go in there. They're just building their forces forward, slowly getting themselves in there, slowly coming across here, using their bombers and fighters initially. But their factory in Manchuria can now get a holding force versus the Soviets up here and start supplying the mainland forces down here as well. Japan look really good on this. I think I've played Japan pretty well this time for the first time in a long time. It hasn't been so successful for the Soviets. Whilst they did have that one brilliant battle down there in the Ukraine, pushing the Germans back, and now having Bulgaria being there next on their list, now being backed up by Italians, because the Germans are shorter supplies here. Germany came on top, as we saw before. They've taken this Karelia factory now and have managed to reinforce into there using their shipping. This twisting effect of the Russians going south and the Germans going north, it means Germany are really strong up here. They've got a factory up here, they've reinforced into here, and the Russians are worried about this lot on their doorstep. They had to make a couple of skirmish attacks versus Poland to try to reduce the pressure that was onto there. But their Russian central, their Moscow base is under threat. We think it shouldn't fall on turn number 3, but it may fall on turn number 4 unless the Allies pull their fingers out and get themselves involved in this battle. To that end, the Brits have got themselves forward and have gone into the Mediterranean and cleared out the Italian fleet that was in there. It was a bit of a brave battle by the Brits. They did come through it quite badly harmed, but obviously there's no Italian fleet left in there now, and one fighter that was trying to protect this lot and in a counter attack has got itself into Bulgaria to help hold these Russians back there. But we think the Brits now, with their factory in Egypt, can now think about attacking Libya with the Americans coming through behind. Should it go badly wrong, and it shouldn't go too badly wrong, we shouldn't, I think. And then the Brits can start using this factory to start supplying India again, albeit slowly. But that's the plan for the Brits so far. And really looking at how strong Germany are now, they've got so much money sloshing around because of this bonus income rule that we're using from the anniversary edition's bonus income section. They're buying now quite a big fleet up here. There's a couple of cruisers, a couple of destroyers and submarines to go along with their transport ships that was moving stuff into Karelia. They can threaten to break out into the Atlantic and start crushing the Allied fleet there. That really would signal very early on the end of the Allied involvement. If the Germans break free and control the Atlantic, it's going to be all over Red Rover, we think. But that is still a little bit further down the line. We've yet to do the British turn. That are going to be attack into Libya. We'll start rolling some dice for that, and then after that we'll see what the Italian reply is going to be like before bringing you this one big massive battle over there in the Pacific Ocean. Let me get the British battle into Libya on the board first, and I'll see you over there. Okay, this is the battle for Libya versus the Brits against the Axis forces, and there is one more plane we could bring into this battle, which is that bomber over there in Gibraltar that the Brits have got there. But we figure if we're going to try to attack this fleet that the German has got with the mainly naval purchase that the UK have made so far, we're going to need some more help up there. So if we get the bomber down here, it'll be out of position. That's why it's staying there in Gibraltar to go back home at the end of this turn. We're going to start rolling this out now and stop our wafflings. We have got 1, 2, 3 fighters all rolling in at 3s and a tank at 3 as well. Let's do those first. And scoring just 1 inferior hit. That's not a good start. They've got 6 infantry artillery combinations there, plus 1 guy rolling in naked. So that's 2s and 1s. And that's not good either. Just 2 hits off of the Axis forces there. One of them is damaged and not destroyed. So we can take these 2 guys away from the Italians and put one of those into a factory to be repaired, because Germany got plenty of money. I think the Italians could do with the help there. Let's see what their reply is, because this could be quite decisive in this battle. There are 2 tanks rolling in at 3s for Germany, plus 1, 2, 3, 4 units rolling in at 2s for the infantry, standing there defending stoutly. 3s and 2s, and I think the Brits have rather got away with that, because there's absolutely 0 hits there by the Axis forces in their defence. Rommel will not be very happy with that. So we take this one off. He can go into the repair yard. That one goes into the scrap bin. And we move into round 2 of the battle. Once again, the Brits have got 1, 2, 3, 4 dice rolling in at 3s. That's the fighters and the 1 tank that's there. And missing again. These dice are loaded in a really bad way. Let's start getting some hits, please. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at 2s, which is the infantry artillery combinations there, and 1 guy at 1 rolling in naked. And we finally scored something there. It's just 2 hits, and once again, one of those is an inferior hit. So I think the last Italian guy goes and one of those German guys goes, but one of those is going to be repaired. And we've got 2 tanks for Germany plus infantry, so infantry on their own. 3s and 2s, and again just scoring the 1 hit off of the Brits. This is a really low scoring affair here. The Brits can take one of those as damaged, not destroyed. They might as well take it on their cheapest land unit, which is going to be 1 infantry, represented by that chip there. And then we get on to the final round of this battle, we think. Well, let's just see how it rolls out, because the way it's been going thus far, anything could happen. It really could. So, we have got 4 of Brits, their fighters and their tank. Can they do something, please? And they scored just the 1 hit. What's up with these guys? They've been loaded with blanks or something. And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 infantry artillery combinations, trying to finish things off now. And they finally have finished things off. But once again, the inferior hit can be taken by these guys straight away before these come into effect. So that 1 tank is damaged and not destroyed. That one is destroyed. They get 2 dice at 3 in reply to finish off this tedious battle and score 1 inferior hit against the Brits as well. So 1 more of these guys will go back to Blighty and to be repaired next time. That goes to be repaired for the Italians. That will be the end of this battle. Let me get everything tidied up back on the board and get those British Navy reinforcements around their coast put back on. And I would probably do the Italian one off camera and see you when we get onto the American turn, which it ends turn number 3. This massive battle. I'm pointing and talking and pointing a different place. This one massive battle here in the Pacific. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, with things tidied up now after that Libyan battle, there's the British forces now in the English Channel, probably enough to dissuade the Germans from coming back out of there. Germany could do with some air units next time round to try to help counter what the British have got. You know, it's one of those yin and yang situations. And here are the Italians down here on the Riviera. Some of the guys are in France helping the Germans out there, just as a little persuasion force, because at one point they were a little bit weaker in here. And some of them now coming across into Bulgaria, as we mentioned before, and they're trying to shore up this southern flank. I don't think the Russians can come forward too much. Let's get this battle, which is the one, he says, swinging round into Wake Island area on the board. It's going to be all this American fleet coming through from here, plus their bomber can fly 1, 2, 3, have a bash at those and go 4, 5, 6 back home again, or even into Hawaiian Islands. We'll see where we go at the end of that battle. But that's going to be on the board upcoming in a couple of seconds. That is the battle marker telling us season 52. Wake Island battle is on the battle board, ready to rock and roll. And if you are an American supporter, I'd suggest you look away now, because this is more scary than Freddy Krueger with a blue rinse. They are behind on the numbers by approximately 20%. So for America, it could be a hit and run attack. It's an attack they really didn't want to make in the first place, but it's been more or less enforced upon them by happenstance. Before we start rolling dice, let me just remind you of the capital ships rules. Capital ships in this case being the battleships on either side. They cannot be targeted by inferior hits, and they cannot be used as damaged not destroyed either. So there's good and bad from there. With submarines, submarines cannot hit air, but if they roll an inferior one, that inferior one can be used to augment another inferior one from one of the surface ships or one of the planes, and then be used to target a vessel. It's a way of just covering off most of these little eventualities. Let's stop waffling, start rolling some dice. For America, the brave, I would suggest. They have got 2 at 4 from their bomber and their battleship, and they've got 2 fighters and 1 cruiser going in at 3s. There's submarines involved, but we haven't got destroyers, so everybody can see everybody at the moment. First roll of the battle, and it is fairly good. I suppose you could have asked for a little bit more than that, but there's 2 hits by America on Japan. They're 2 clean hits, no problem at all with that. They then have the 3 destroyers and 3 submarines, all rolling in at 2s for America. Wanting a big smash if they can, and it's not a big smash. It is just 1 damage, a clean damage though, done by a submarine. That must go onto one of the ships rather than one of the planes, and that is about all America have done. I think they're going to be absolutely horrified with that result, because Japan can absorb 2 of those hits because they're just regular hits onto their battleships and take 1 as regular damage. My fingers will work on this 1 submarine there. That's very, very poor for America land. let's hope for their sake that they can absorb plenty of hits and Japan can miss everything entirely. It's not going to happen, is it? There are 6 dice for them, rolling in at 4s straight away. Let's just roll that because there's 4 aircraft, of their 2 carriers and 2 battleships. And they have just absolutely monstered that roll. They have scored 5 hits, but 4 of them are inferiors. I think America aren't going to be too unhappy with that. Let's just see the rest of that result though. There are 4 destroyers, there are 2 aircraft carriers, and there's 1 submarine that's going to roll in at a 1 on its own. And again, wow, I think America are happy with that because they are all inferior hits. And as I said, we could use that to target, but it counts as an inferior hit otherwise. That's going to take some thinking about. I would suggest, as far as Japan are concerned, if they were to use all those dice to target just 1 American unit, say the bomber, it's a heck of a waste of a roll. Instead, if they give all those dice to America as damaged and not destroyed, America can get 6 units back at next turn at a really cheap price, because they're going to take that one on their battleship as the normal battleships hit. So let me think what we have to do here. Okay, this might be slightly controversial, but my imagining is that Japan are going to use all these inferior ones to target just this 1 bomber, and let America absorb that hit from the 3 on their battleship. The reason being, I'm looking at this board and I'm thinking that Japan, losing that 1 there, are still way in front in this battle. It looks like Japan are strong enough to let the Americans just come to them again, and America, well, they're going to be tempted to go for that again. That was the whole idea in the first place, was to hit Japan, hit them hard, hit them early, and if Japan had inflicted those as damage not destroyed, then America would lose all those units there and would for sure pull back. It wouldn't give Japan a second bite at the cherry. As it is now, I think America are tempted to go again with this battle. So let's do just that. They have their 1 battleship going to roll it in at a 4. They have 2 fighters and 1 destroyer. 2 fighters and 1 cruiser going in at 3s. And scoring 2 clean hits again. And then we have the 3 destroyers which were allowed to live, and the 3 submarines that were allowed to live. Hope Japan don't live to regret this one, but it was a thought out idea. And it's just 1 hit there from that destroyer. Everything else has missed. So just 3 casualties for Japan, and they're all completely taken out as in casualties rather than damage not destroyed. Take those all onto those destroyers there. In reply now for Japan, they have again the 6 dice from their battleships and their fighter planes. We roll those initially. And they've scored massively there, absolutely massively. That is 5 hits done, and again they're clean hits. There's just 1 damaged and not destroyed that America may be able to take, depending on what targeting applies in the last half of this roll. It's worked out nicely for Japan now, I think. 1, 2, 3 are the casualty destroyers, another destroyer there, and there are 2 aircraft carriers that are also going to be throwing dice at this. Yeah, I think America are going to be regretting this. These are all going to go in at 2s and scoring 2 more hits. 1 of those is a targeted or damage not destroyed. And I think in this case, I think the Japanese are going to apply those as targeted hits. They're going to target 1 of the fighters, perhaps the cruiser actually. We target the cruiser, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other dice that America must take off as regular casualties, which is going to be submarines and destroyers. They are lost from the battle. These are lost from the battle as well. and I think America are going to be running back to the Hawaiian Islands sea zones, licking their wounds and crying for mummy. Yeah, that's, I think, all we can do. And these guys from Japan, these are getting themselves righted at the end of this battle and put back into the Wake Island sea zone. So I'm talking and pointing in a different direction. Yeah, Japan are going to reinforce Wake Island. America are going to be pulling back into Hawaiian Islands, and I get the rest of the American turn done, including putting their reinforcements on the board, which was some Navy expecting this kind of result, although hoping for something better. That'll be it for turn number 3 as well, and I think at the end of video number 1, sorry, I will see you in video number 2, turn number 4, coming up sometime in the near future.